Hi, everyone. Oh, shoot. There we go. just barely figuring this out. My name's Rob Bowron. I'm the econometrician behind Bowron, the advanced stat system for college football. If this is your first time tuning in, we're going to preview the 2024 season from an advanced stats perspective, looking at a lot of what happened last season, looking at the factors that are going to project into this year. One of the useful things about statistical projections coming into a season is that it evaluates everyone from a completely objective perspective, which is not to say that it sees everything. It is not omniscient, but it is evaluating everyone on how they performed in prior years, how they've recruited, and returning production. That gives you a useful baseline to be able to evaluate teams, and then make your own decisions. Bring your own priors. It doesn't obviously see coaching changes. It does see quarterback changes and things like that. I will say the returning production that we use from Bill Connolly does attempt to take into account of transfers. There is a totally reasonable debate how successful that is, but I mean, it also won't see injuries, things like that. Like it clearly did not see, say, Cam Rising's injury coming into last season for Utah. Anyway, as we come into this year, I'm really excited to preview this season. We have I think a really interesting college football season coming up. I think one of the things that when we think about this year for college football versus last year, I think Georgia has a chance to be excellent in a way that we wouldn't talk about, last season. I mean, a little bit with this Georgia team. They were very good, in last season. They weren't quite as good as they were, of course, the year before or the year before that. Some of that we fully expected that. We fully expected with Mike Bobo in charge of the offense for things to take a bit of a step back. Hold on. I do need to check one thing, and I know that's super annoying, but I do need to check one thing because I'm looking at this and I'm thinking that... No, we look good. All right. Anyway, so apologies as we're doing this live. Anyway, as we came into last year, we really expected Georgia to take a little bit of a step back on defense, take a little bit of and also take a little bit of a step back on offense, mostly because they lost their offensive coordinator. Kirby Smart is, of course, your head coach, but Mike Bobo is back at offensive coordinator. They were really good last year, but they weren't excellent. And in 2022, 2022, that's what really drove this team forward was how good their offense was. They were at number 2 overall last season, so they were excellent last year. They're, of course, number 1 in 2022. As we grade them out, they sit at number 3 overall in coaching and development, 49 overall in returning production, number 3 in recruiting. I mean, as you look at these numbers, 49 is not bad for a team that's as talented as Georgia is. The number 3 overall in average recruiting. I don't find it valuable. I don't think it's terribly predictive. The recruiting rankings, the ones that actually are the class rankings. I use the average per player. I do find that is far more predictive than the recruiting rankings themselves that the recruiting services actually put out. Anyway, they were number 6 overall in special teams. Georgia, as predicted at number 1, they're set up for success coming into the season without a doubt. They also return the quarterback. They have staff consistency. Things that can really undo dynasties in college football, like turnover at coordinator positions. One of the more difficult things, I think, a lot of people, when they think about the head coach's job, they don't think about this, but one of the most important jobs of a boss is hiring. Kirby Smart's done a really good job in hiring. I don't love the Bobo hire, but he's still really good as an offensive coordinator. They weren't anywhere near, even though they were very good last season, they weren't anything like they were in 22. If we run through how they did overall last year, grading out how they played, they started out the season playing unsurprisingly, you're going to have some of your best games against some of your worst opponents. They're just not going to expose, the kinds of things you're going to run into later on. They had a really good, their best game of the season far and away was against South Carolina for overall performance. They had a really good game against UAB. Pretty poor performance against Kentucky. And then they, roll through Vanderbilt. Decent game against Florida. Decent game against Missouri. Pretty bad game against Ole Miss. Pretty bad game against Tennessee. Just overall, we expected them to play better, even though they won those games. Decent game against Georgia Tech. I'm reading those wrong. I'm sorry. Oh my gosh. Those are backwards. So they actually underperformed. I need to man, this is embarrassing. So if this is your first time tuning in, it may be your last time tuning in at the way that this one is starting out. Forgive me. I took a couple of months off. Them's the breaks. They actually did not play great against Ball State. So all of these are compared against Georgia's overall season ranking. They didn't play great against Ball State. They didn't play great against South Carolina. That was their worst game of the season. I'm sorry. UAB was there. It was also not a great game. They had a fantastic game against Kentucky, really stuck it to the Wildcats. Again, not a great game against Vanderbilt. Kind of shuffled along against Florida and Missouri. Great game against Mississippi. Great game against Tennessee. Little bit of a step back against Georgia Tech. Alabama, has been the team that they have really struggled against. Even though they've gotten some wins in the last couple seasons, they didn't get the win this time, of course. Really struggled in this game. And then, of course, relatively speaking, we don't grade games that are non-playoff bowl games at 100%. They get less weight than the playoff games. And of course, Florida State was truly without everyone in that game. But Georgia still played really well in that one. If we let's hop over and take a look at the offense, and we'll run through the defense as well from last season. Then we'll take a look at the schedule as we run through the preview. So offensively, Georgia was number 3 overall on offense last season. Really good offense. The top offense last year was LSU. Great offense last season with Mike Denbrock at offensive coordinator, and Jaden Daniels, of course, won the Heisman. You can see this is, if you graded this, which we did here on a 0 to 100 scale, Georgia ends up at about 85% ish, as good as LSU was last season. Really good overall at drive efficiency. They're number 7 overall there. Good at putting together long drives to be able to put up points, sustaining drives, putting plays together, not making mistakes. It's a measure of both play calling and consistency. Number 2 overall in explosive drives. They were a really explosive offense last season. Number 11 overall in play efficiency. They did a decent job outside of explosives, putting up their yards per play. Number 2 overall in negative drives. Really good job here. Avoiding 3 and outs, avoiding turnovers, not letting the defense do things to you. Really important thing in college football. Number 10 overall in effective rush. Number 4 in effective pass. They were a really, really good passing offense last season with Carson Beck at the helm. Of course, they were number 1 overall in 22, so this is a bit of a step back. Carson Beck is your quarterback, 72.4% completion percentage, 9.5 PERT. Those are excellent. Those are really good numbers in modern college football, exactly where you want your quarterback to be. Beck, of course, comes back. They're at 24 in returning production. 76% of their production's coming back. If you're going to place the reason we're projecting Georgia at number 1 is not just that they were at number 2 last season, it's that they are bringing back so much on the offensive side of the ball. Again, I'm not massively sold on Bobo as a play caller, but I think they have a shot to be close to the top on offense. Given the projected excellence of the rest of the team, they should be in a really good spot. They allowed disruptive plays on 14.8% of their plays last season. They had a 55.1% third down conversion rate. That's excellent. They did a really, as you can see with that drive efficiency number there, they were able to sustain drives. I think one of the numbers to keep an eye on with them is, are they able to improve that drive efficiency number? The sort of big 3 out of the metrics here: the drive efficiency, the explosive drives, and the negative drives. Play efficiency is less important. The number to keep an eye on is if they can improve that drive efficiency. It's one of the things that really separates the very, very good offenses from excellent offenses in college football. Offensively last year, I need to figure out sizing on this. TBD. This mirrors a lot of what we saw in the overall. They had a really standout game against Kentucky. Florida was actually a good game for the offense overall last season, relative to their median performance last season. But the Mississippi game offensively was just flat out excellent. They had another really good game against Tennessee. Not a great game against Alabama. Again, like the South Carolina game was really their worst offensive game last year. A pretty good game against Florida State for what that matters, of course. If we hop over and look at the defense, however, they were number 10 overall last season. Glenn Schumann, I can almost read my own handwriting, is your defensive coordinator. Number 10 overall in drive efficiency. They did a good job in finding ways to, get off the field, not give up long drives. That's a really important skill for a defense to have. Number 11 overall in explosive drives. They did a good job overall containing big plays. Number 7 in play efficiency outside of explosives. They did a good job limiting their yards per play. Number 15 overall in negative drives. They did force some 3-and-outs, force some turnovers. Certainly some room to improve here. And if you look through here, they definitely struggled to defend the run a bit more. 17 in effective rush versus number 9 overall in effective pass. They were the number 1 defense, even though they had taken a step back from their excellent year in 2021. They were still the number 1 overall defense last season. I think they have a significant chance to improve over where they were last year. They did take a bit of a step back, of course, from where they were even in 22, in 23. They caused disruptive plays on 21.4% of their plays. They allowed a third down conversion on 25.7% of their third downs. These are numbers that they could certainly improve on. They do return 77% of their returning production. That puts them at 55% coming back. Those are decent numbers. Like I said, I like this defense to improve. I don't expect them to be at number 10. Georgia with an offense under Bobo, I think, like I said, it's not going to put them in the kind of range that you found them when they were under Todd Monken, but I do think that the defense has a chance to significantly improve. And unless it's potentially Oregon, unless it's Oregon out there with a massive monster offense, I just don't expect there to be anybody out there that could put up the kind of numbers that this Georgia team might really struggle with. When we look overall at how they performed defensively last season, they actually had a good game against Ball State. Struggled a bit with South Carolina, had a really good game shutting down Kentucky. They had a bad game defensively against Vanderbilt, easily their worst game of the season. And then, of course, an outstanding game again against Tennessee. They seem to have the Vols number, particularly from shutting down Josh Heupel's offense. Again, struggled with Alabama. Pretty good game against Florida State overall. When we hop over, let's take a look and hop over and look at the schedule, because the schedule is even though I think when you look at it, there's a lot of very good teams on it, Georgia projects to be quite a bit better than some of these teams. You started out with Clemson. They're projected at number 11 overall. Clemson just hasn't been the same. Dabo Swinney I think a lot of people tend to focus on the not taking transfers in. I think the bigger problem is just that for a long time, he happened to have the best defensive coordinator in all of college football, and Brent Venables on his staff. He's really struggled to put it together since then. And offensively, Clemson's never quite been an absolute juggernaut offensively. They've had some very, very good offenses, but they've struggled to put up offensive numbers. And without the Venables defense there, even though they've still been quite good, they haven't been excellent, and they really need to be. Georgia projects as a pretty significant favorite here on a neutral field. Even though Clemson projects to be pretty good, just outside the top 10, Georgia's got a win probability in the 90th percentile. And we have them favored. And again, these naive spreads don't have it fully baked in. Still, the change in the rules so that the clock accelerates a little faster. We did lose about a drive a game last year. So I would say, this spread is probably a little closer, probably closer to 14 overall. Kentucky, they get on the road. Kentucky does project to be pretty good. Again, it's not going to matter a lot because Georgia projects to be a lot better. Unless Georgia really stumbles against the Wildcats, they should win going away. I mean, stumbles is you're in the range. You start to get in the range of Georgia needs to have a bad day and probably turn it over twice. Alabama projects at number 6 overall. Georgia's, has struggled significantly against Alabama, but of course we have a completely new coaching staff at Alabama. I do like, for the most part, what DeBoer has been able to do, with the coaching staff that he's brought in, particularly a defensive coordinator. I thought he made a really good hire in Kane Womack, getting him to come on and be his DC. They have absolute, but I would be surprised if Alabama has Georgia's number the way they have the last couple seasons coming into this year. I think this is a year for Georgia to definitely run away with it a little bit. They are going to have to, of course, plan for whatever DeBoer has going offensively there. I'm interested, of course, to see what the DeBoer offense looks like without, Ryan Grubb as his offensive coordinator, now the coordinator at the Seahawks. DeBoer himself is an excellent play caller. Nick Sheridan is not an excellent play caller. I'm interested to see how long that lasts and how that goes. Auburn still struggling along a little bit with Hugh Freeze, projected at number 24 overall. They're a team that might be, in year two of Freeze, might be able to put it together more. Georgia should still win going away, barring some turnovers here. Mississippi State seems like a team that's definitely still projects decently at number 36 overall, kind of middle of the power. I guess we're power 4 this year, not power 5 anymore. Kind of projects towards the middle of the power 4. But I would say with Mississippi State, I don't think this is the year that they're going to come out and surprise anybody. They may shock somebody in SEC play. I doubt that it's going to be Georgia. I think that they could end up underachieving this projection in year one. Could certainly see them take a bit of a step back. Texas is a team a lot of people really like coming into next year. I think a lot of people tend to fall into is the quarterback coming back and is the coaching staff the same kind of trap. Not that Texas doesn't project to be a good team at number 8 overall. I've seen some projections that have them at as high as number 2 coming into next year. I'm not sold on Quinn Ewers. I really like Sarkisian. He's probably, for my money, still the best play caller going in college football. He hasn't put it together at Texas. I think Ewers is a big part of that. They struggled a little bit to get the offense going the way Sark had it going in Alabama when he was there. I think Texas could take another step forward offensively. I'm not sure though they're a team that if Ewers were to hit his potential, and Sark was able to get that offense untracked, I really think Texas could put up some massive numbers. And that's the difference. I think Bobo's not going to get you massive numbers. He's going to be really good. He's going to put up some decent offensive numbers. He's got probably the best quarterback in college football in Carson Beck coming into next year. But the offense just has a little bit of handicap on it with Bobo as a play caller versus what they had under Monken. Sarkisian with Ewers, it's a little bit of a flip there. It's not the play caller that's the cap on it. It's the quarterback. Ewers I don't think can execute the offense at the kind of level that would allow them to get away. And they do have some significant losses, particularly on the interior defensive line. I like their defensive coordinator in Kwiatkowski. But that said, I think this feels about right for Texas. I don't think that I think you could see them higher than this, but I don't think that they're necessarily unless the offense can really get going. I don't expect them to be in the 1 or 2 range coming into this season. Florida, this feels about right. This is a pretty talented team, reasonably well coached, but on a neutral field again, of course, for the world's greatest outdoor cocktail party. Florida it doesn't feel like that Napier is going to really get it going. They're at 96. Georgia's got a 96% win probability. Almost 21 points. Maybe call it closer to 18 if you factor in the accelerated clock. I like Georgia a lot in this game. They probably needed to turn it over 4 times in order to lose here. Ole Miss, another team that I think people are really high on coming into this season with Jackson Dart and Lane Kiffin, still there, of course. Of course, their offensive coordinator, Charlie Weiss Jr. I'm less sold on them. I do like Pete Golding as their defensive coordinator. He didn't work out at Bama, but he was largely good there, and I think he's an improvement over what they've had the last couple seasons. I do expect the defense to be better than they had last year. Dart has not been asked to do a lot. He does have a terrific arm. He does make some really good throws. Kiffin is not Kiffin himself has not really run an offense. I think he gets a lot of credit at Alabama. But really the really big offensive numbers came after Kiffin. Kiffin had already departed with Mike Loxley and then Steve Sarkisian. Kiffin's a pretty good play caller. He runs a pretty good system. I don't expect him to put up mind-numbing numbers for Ole Miss. I think that this is definitely a game that you should keep an eye on here. Ole Miss has a chance to beat this projection at 12 because I do think Dart is really good, and I think the defense could be better in year 2 under Golding. That maybe gets this down to 10 points. That starts to get into the range of, hey, a game you should keep an eye on if you're a Georgia fan. Tennessee, the Vols, I mean, it is the young quarterback era. It's the Nico era of Tennessee. The Vols took a massive step backward last season at quarterback, and the offense, Heupel's offense, which I admittedly thought might be a little bit recession-proof. I thought he would find a way to make it work. They clearly did not. They absolutely fell off a cliff last season. I think the Vols have a chance to be pretty good this year. I think that with Nico at quarterback, with another year of practice under his belt, really being the starter and getting starters reps out throughout the spring and into the fall, I think offensively Tennessee has a chance to bounce back. They are a team that you do have to watch out for because Heupel has put up some really big offensive numbers in the past. They could pass. They have a chance with Heupel as a play caller, and if Nico were to really put it together, now let's say that those chance, I would put that chance at about like 30%. I don't expect Tennessee to, but that's a reasonable chance. There's a 70% chance it doesn't happen, but there's a reasonably good chance Tennessee puts up one of the top two offenses in college football coming into this year, maybe even the number one offense in college football if Nico really figures it out. Heupel does run a really good system and is often, but let's not kid ourselves though. Georgia's had his number, and this is the same Georgia staff that's largely had his number, almost no matter who's playing quarterback. So you take that with maybe a bit of a grain of salt. I think defensively, they have another shot to potentially take a step forward. Tennessee's been sort of hovering in the 20s for like the last two seasons. I've expected them to take a step forward into the 10s. We'll see if they're able to do that this season. This game might be around a touchdown at home. That I think is, again, like that's a pretty close game if you're definitely going to need to keep an eye on. If you're a Georgia fan, obviously UMass, that should be a walkover. I like Don Brown as a coach, but that's a very, very tough job. Georgia Tech, this is a team that I think could beat this projection we have for them at 73. That's one of the worst teams overall in the Power 5. That's not to say, however, that I think that they're going to be a lot better than that, and I would expect Georgia to win going away, unless they are just sort of mailing it in and playing a lot of young guys late in the season, and what will be a game that doesn't count for the SEC title, at all. Also, like, we don't rate games against FCS and beta rank, so just add one essentially to these expected win totals. Teams that are in that range of where you have a 12-game schedule and we're projecting you to win 11 games, we're really projecting you to likely go undefeated. All right. Whoa. We made it, sort of. I don't know. That could have been really bad. It will clearly get better. I apologize. We're starting out with Georgia, the number one team overall, and we're sort of like working out the kinks as we go, but I don't know. That's life. I'm not getting paid for this. This is just fun. Anyway, I'm really excited to see this Georgia team coming into this year. I think they have a shot to be really good. I think they have a shot to be like an even better version of maybe what we saw with Michigan this season, which is not a team that like you would maybe say from like the 2018 era of college football, 2019 LSU. I mean, LSU is of course like the paramount example of this, but where we had teams that managed to put together really, really big numbers, whether it be on the offensive side of the football with Alabama and LSU. 2019 Ohio State was like that as well as having some really, really big defensive years too. 2019 Clemson was like that with Venables. 2021 Georgia was like that. 2022 Georgia was a big offensive year. Last year we sort of knew at least I did. If you watched any of the previews that I did for last season, I definitely talked about coming in this might be Michigan's year because Mike Bobo had been hired at Georgia, Tommy Rees had been hired at Alabama. That would open things up for a team like Michigan that was very good and was returning a lot, but was never going to be able to compete if somebody was out there putting up massive numbers. If you remove the possibility of massive numbers, then Michigan was clearly a team to watch out for. Georgia, I think, could be an even better version of that. I think Mike Bobo, of course, still has a cap on what he's necessarily going to put up for you offensively. That's not to say they can't be very, very good, though. The teams, if you're a Georgia fan, that you're going to want to watch out for coming into next season that might be able to put up really big offensive numbers that might sort of undo or sort of like put them in a dangerous place or put Georgia in a dangerous place where they might need to have a really good game to beat them, or they might come into the game as an underdog. those teams I would think of as Oregon. I really like their offensive coordinator, getting Dylan Gabriel, who's a very proficient college quarterback, probably not much of a pro quarterback prospect, but a guy that definitely can play well in college. And that system, I think, is going to play well. I think you have to look at Texas with the potential that Quinn Ewers figures it out. And then it gets a little iffy. Like I said, I wouldn't put a lot of money on Tennessee necessarily figuring that out. And truly too, I think a lot of people are looking at Ohio State. I like what Ohio State's going to have defensively. They probably have the best defense on paper coming into college football next year. I'm less sold on that offensively. Ryan Day is a terrific play caller, but hasn't really been able to put it together since 2019. They've struggled with their offensive line play. They do return a lot, but I'm not sold on Will Howard. And Chip Kelly's been very good as a play caller. He's never been great. So I'm less sold on the Buckeyes there, I think. I think I'd watch out for the Ducks. If you wanted to hear me say who I thought like could put up the best offensive numbers coming in the next season. But Georgia could certainly be up there. If nobody puts up really big numbers, then Georgia could likely have the best offense in college football next year. All right. I'm going to try to get like 2 of these out a week. I'm traveling for work next week, so maybe not next week I'll be doing 2, but I'll try to get these out to 2 a week going forward as we cruise toward the season. Try to get through as much of the top 25 as I can. I'm really excited coming into this year. I still don't have the schedule file. The people that I purchased data from, which are the same folks that provide data to the playoff committee, have merged with somebody and haven't figured out pricing yet. It's kind of annoying as we are almost the summer for them not to have figured out pricing yet. But hopefully they will do that soon, and then I'll be able to post all, the schedule, and I won't have to be sort of manually doing the projections coming into next year, and I'll be able to put the schedule file up on the website. Anyway, you can find all the stats you just saw and a whole lot more at sharpcollegefootball.com. You can find me at BetaRankFB or at Sharp College Football. We don't have a Pac-12 podcast anymore. We got to figure that out. I think we're doing a Big Ten podcast. Got to get that started again too. Anyway, you can find everything at sharpcollegefootball.com if you want to listen to get some nostalgia, listen to some back episodes of some 12-pack radio. You can find it at sharpcollegefootball.com /12-pack radio. Hey, thank you so much for tuning in. And we'll catch you next.